Here are 6 players that you must target in every single Dynasty League. We'll tell you who they are next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can also check me out over on the Locked On Cowboys podcast. And joining me today, as always, is Michael Fabiano. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. You can also check out all of his great work over on SI. And on today's show, we're taking a look at 6 really deep sleepers, players that are being picked outside of the top 120 selections over on Dynasty League Football that you need to roster in every single Dynasty League. And Fabs, let's start at the running back position. Who's a guy that you're targeting that you can get way late in drafts?
You know, I was doing my research for this, Marcus. I was surprised that Jordan Mason isn't in the 120 range. He's at 124, so he's just outside of that. He's the RB20. And he's actually being picked behind Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones is the RB33. His ADP is 103.5. Mason is entering his age 26 season. And we saw flashes of what he could be last year. He averaged 18.6 points in his first 4 games of the year, replacing Christian McCaffrey for the 49ers. And then in week 6, you'll remember he got hurt. He had that shoulder injury. And that kind of lingered for a lot of the rest of the season until McCaffrey returned. And, of course, we also saw some Isaac Guerrero there as well. The 49ers decided to trade Mason to Minnesota during the offseason. And I don't think Mason's just there to sit behind Aaron Jones. Let's keep this in mind. Aaron Jones is 30. He also finished last year with 306 touches. That's the most touches he's ever had in a single season, which is kind of a surprise, right? Because you think back to his time in Green Bay where he was a featured back, never had that many touches. So at 29, he had a career high in touches. He was 14th in fantasy points among runners. Very good. Very good. But he was 7th in touches. So not only is he coming off of the most work he's ever had in a single season, but now the Vikings bring in a guy who is 26, who showed some potential last season. And when you factor in that typically running backs at Jones's age, right around 30, 31, you start to see some regression. Well, that could end up being a scenario where Mason is the better running back for the next couple of seasons. Maybe not right away, but it's possible. This is the scenario here where you're getting the younger, potentially better player and the better value from the Vikings offense. And the Vikings, Marcus, pretty good on the offensive side of the football, very fantasy friendly. And it's not costing you a whole heck of a lot. Again, his ADP is nearly 124 right now. And so he's kind of got everything you want. Youth. I mean, he's not 22, but he's in the prime of his career and he hasn't had a lot of work. So this is a really nice ad and somebody that I'm definitely targeting.
One of my beliefs in fantasy and dynasty over the last, 20 years or so is that don't buy the Kyle Shanahan or Mike Shanahan running back that moves to a different team. Like it's always been bad whenever these guys have moved on. But I do think this is different because I don't think Jordan Mason was in a great situation last year because that offensive line was not very good. They had a bunch of injuries. The passing game was nowhere near as efficient. I just thought he had to do a lot on his own. And he's not Christian McCaffrey. He's nothing like that. He is a between the tackle grinder, but I think he's pretty good at that, Fabs. And he's going into a very good situation. Like I think Minnesota's situation is just as good as San Francisco's, if not way better. I do think it's way better. He's going to be playing behind a good offensive line. He's going to be playing with an offense that's got receivers all over the place. I think he's going to get work. I think he's going to have some standalone value because I do think they're going to want to interchange Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. But man, if anything were to happen to Aaron Jones, if he tweaks his ankle for two games, I mean, we're talking about Mason putting up, top 15 numbers each and every week.
He's got the potential to do that, no question about it. And I know that Jones did sign a 2-year extension, so he's under contract for a couple of years. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be the starter for both of those years, especially if the regression monster coming, or he ends up getting hurt, which is more likely for a guy who's in his early 30s. Especially again, a stat that surprised me that he's coming off of the most work he's ever had in a single season.
Yeah, and one of the things that we love in Dynasty is try to piece together that RB2 because you can do it pretty cheap most years. And we're looking at Jordan Mason probably as a rental. I think he's on a 1-year deal. You trade for him, you go acquire him, you have him as part of your RB2 backfield, and you throw him in when you need him, and then you move on. Like it's okay to do that with the RB2 position. So I think that's a fantastic call. Mine's a little bit lower down the ranks than yours, and it's Keaton Mitchell of the Baltimore Ravens. If you remember in 2023, Keaton Mitchell was awesome. Like he was creating chunk play after chunk play. And then he got hurt. He tore his ACL. He missed a big part of the 2024 season. He came back and he looked okay. But the expectation is that he's going to be fully healthy going into this year. He's incredibly young. He's 23. He's RB 74 on Dynasty League football. And Derrick Henry is coming off a 380 touch season. And I know Derrick Henry's a unicorn, so he's going to age differently than every other running back in NFL history. But I don't think Keaton Mitchell's a bad stash just in case Henry gets banged up. Or maybe, and Fabs, I could honestly see this happening as well. Baltimore cutting back on Henry snaps a little bit just to try to keep him fresh for the postseason. And maybe it's not 370 touches in the regular season. Maybe it's more like 290. And we see Keaton Mitchell get more touches. He's just somebody in a very good offense with a lot of home run speed that I want to stash.
Yeah, stashing him is certainly a good idea, especially where he's going. I mean, this guy's basically free at this point. Don't mistake him for a guy who's going to be a featured back in the NFL or a workhorse. He's not going to be,
Nope.
But he's an explosive type of guy. You get the ball in his hands, and the Ravens are probably going to try to do that this season and see what he can do for you. And we've seen some flashes of it. The durability might be an issue, but we're talking about guys who are coming off the board late. Okay, they're coming off the board in the second half of your draft. And I would agree that he's certainly someone that is well worth stashing, seeing what happens. He's very young, and you mentioned that Derrick Henry's a unicorn. He certainly is. He's a big ass unicorn, but I mean, you never know what's going to happen. So I totally agree with you.
Keaton Mitchell averaged 8.4 yards per carry during his rookie season. And then he got hurt. It reminds me a lot of Devon Achane and what we were thinking about Achane. Remember last year, we were all predicting that Achane was going to take a big step back in his yards per carry. And he did, right? But he more than made up for it with volume. I'm not saying that he's going to get the receiving volume that, Achane got, but I wouldn't be surprised if Keaton Mitchell does get some more work in the passing game as an outlet receiver. He's just going so late. Overall, right now, his ranking is 214. You got guys like Kendre Miller and Jaleel McLaughlin and Taj Brooks and Ollie Gordon all going ahead of him. He's free. He's going to be on one of the best offenses in the league. And we know that the Ravens want to run the football. So he's one of my favorite stashes this year.
Yeah, the attraction to me is where you can get him. Like you said, he's basically free.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about some wide receivers that we want to have at the bottom of our roster in every single Dynasty League. That includes a couple of AFC receivers, including Marvin Mims. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or you're planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, and your spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. I love that Monarch Money is helping my family build wealth. We've been spending money on just stupid stuff over the last 6 months, but they've helped us get our finances back on track. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNNFL at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKDOWNNFL for half off your first year. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are telling you guys about some sleepers that we are stashing in every single Dynasty league. And let's get to the receivers, because this is the position that I love to stash, because I love watching these guys in college. I like, figuring out their situations. You've got a very interesting stash here.
Yeah, I dig Cedric Tillman, and I did last year. He was one of the players that I was telling fantasy managers to go and get off the waiver wire. He had a 3-game stretch last year where he had 21 catches, 255 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he averaged 22 points per game. He was awesome.
Yep.
And right now, he's got everything you want. He's the wide receiver 63. His ADP is 145, and he's entering his age 25 season. So he's really young, and he is a starter. Like, the Browns don't have depth at wide receiver. You've got Jerry Jeudy, you've got Tillman, and then you've got Deontay Johnson, who played for half the league last year. Okay,
he might not go in he might not even play if it's cold out. See,
exactly. Which, I mean, he's in Cleveland. He better prepare himself. So everything is there. Everything is there for Cedric Tillman to have his breakout year. We got a little taste of it last season, and then unfortunately he got hurt. He had the concussion, and he got hurt, I believe it was like week 12. He didn't play the rest of the year because of that concussion. So, is durability an issue? I mean, maybe, but he is going to get targets. Now, he may be third in targets because David Njoku is also there, but he is going to be in the top 3 in targets for the Browns. The big question mark with Tillman is who will be the quarterback. Now, I've been saying this. I hope from a fantasy standpoint, a selfish statistical standpoint, that Joe Flacco is the quarterback, because I think Joe Flacco can make Jerry Jeudy, obviously, Njoku, obviously, and Tillman all very fantasy relevant this season. Moving forward, you've got Dylan Gabriel, you've got Shedeur Sanders.
I hope it's Shedeur if it's not Flacco, because I think Shedeur is probably the best pocket passer of the bunch.
Right. I'm not even going to mention Kenny Pickett, because I mean, Kenny Pickett's in a contract year, and I'm just not a fan. So that's going to be a big determining factor in terms of what Tillman becomes long term. But the potential is there for him to be very good, not elite, but a very good player. You're talking about like a wide receiver 3 flex type of player over the next couple of years. He's also going to be coming up in a contract year in a couple of seasons. So, he's going to want to perform at a high level, because what do these players all want? Money. They want big contracts. They want Super Bowls too, but I think, the money maybe comes first. We'll see. But the quarterback situation is big in terms of what he becomes. But I really think that the ceiling is high for Cedric Tillman, and everything is there that you want from a dynasty perspective. Basically a free player, young player, and he's going to get targets.
By the way, I had a player tell me one time that Super Bowl rings are nice, but they don't buy yachts. Which is
listen, man. We're in the real world here, folks. We know what comes first.
I think Cedric Tillman's an awesome call. That's actually who I had before you stole the name. There's just not many receivers that you're going to get in this range that are the clear-cut number 2 and have like the size that you want. And, this used to be a big thing in dynasty leagues like a decade ago, that, we would kind of discount the smaller guys and only target the big guys. And the big guys would be the ones that are all propped up. But now, I mean, someone like Cedric Tillman, who's 6'3", 215 and runs in the low 4.5s, and you can get him outside of the top 140 selections. I mean, to me, that's like the ultimate dart throw, right? And here's the thing with Tillman, he's been somebody who's always been awesome when he's played, but the durability has been a problem all the way back to Tennessee. He was putting up huge numbers, and then he had a high ankle sprain. Jalen Hyatt came in, replaced him, and kind of surpassed him.
What happened to that guy?
Yeah, I know. Well, I know. I love Tillman because he is so different than Jerry Jeudy. We saw him being used down the field as a receiver. And I think if Joe Flacco is the quarterback, I do think he could be the deep weapon in this offense because he's got fantastic body control. He makes unbelievable catches. I love this fit. I love this pick. And I just get this sneaky suspicion, Fabs, that Cleveland's offense is going to be better than maybe people anticipate. And I know the quarterback situation has everybody on edge, but this offensive line is healthy. And you look at the starting offensive line, it should be better. They've added 2 new running backs. And I think most importantly, Kevin Stefanski is going back to running his offense, which was incredibly successful like in 2020 and 2021. I'm buying all these Browns players at a discount right now.
And that's what you want too. I mean, you want to obviously get the best players possible, but getting the best players possible also factors into where you're getting them. And
Yeah.
so when you're getting a Cedric Tillman at wide receiver 63, which is bananas, and some of these other Browns players, because people just automatically assume the team is going to suck. Keep in mind, though, I mean, if a team is bad on the field, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be bad from a fantasy perspective all the way around, especially if the defense isn't great, because the offense is going to have to throw the football, run a lot of plays, try to attempt to make comebacks. And sometimes that could be somewhat of a secret sauce in terms of spitting out fantasy points. And the Browns may be one of those types of teams.
All right. My guy is Marvin Mims, wide receiver 61, 129th overall. He's only 23. Okay. So you're talking about an incredibly young player going into year 3. He's already been a 2-time all pro selection as a kick and punt returner. Now, I know that's different, but we've had several players in NFL history kind of start their careers on special teams, play so well in that phase of the game that they get moved to offense, whether that's Antonio Brown, Julian Edelman, even someone like Dante Hall a little bit. We can go through the names. There's a lot of guys. Wes Welker is another one, right? He is so dynamic on kick and punt returns that you would think that he'd get more involved in the offense. And he did in the second half of last year. I believe from week 9 on, Marvin Mims averaged 60 yards per game on offense.
He was good.
He was really good. And you look at this Denver depth chart, they have Cortland Sutton, who seems like he's in a contract battle. I don't know if Denver wants to pay him. They drafted Pat Bryant in round 3, who is a 4.65 receiver who is going to be more of your possession underneath guy. Sean Payton's comparing him to Michael Thomas. There's just nobody else on this roster that has the deep speed and the playmaking of Marvin Mims. I don't mind throwing a dart on Marvin Mims because I like Bo Nix. I love Sean Payton. And I think this offense is going to be better than most people anticipate.
It's a great dart. It's a great dart throw. There's no question about that. Again, you saw some flashes of what he could be last season. And like you mentioned, the Broncos have a lot of wide receivers, but outside of Cortland Sutton, we don't know where these guys are going to slot in. In fact, I mean, I would project that Mims is going to be the number 2 wide receiver in this offense coming up in 2025. Now, I think bringing in Evan Ingram, and who I love, and Marcus and I have talked about that. Now we're talking more probably in terms of the next couple of seasons rather than long term in terms of dynasty. That could affect some of that target share, but I mean, he's got the deep speed. He's got the ability to break off big plays after the catch. So I do like Mims as one of these late dart throws.
And he just feels different than every other receiver on the roster, including Evan Ingram. You want to include him as a receiver because Ingram's going to play out of the slot and do his damage over the middle of the field. Mims is the guy that you do the play action shots down the field. He's the guy that you're giving tunnel screens to. He's the guy that you're giving jet sweeps to. And it's not going to take all that much more usage for Marvin Mims to be like a flex play. Because again, we saw it in the second half of the year. He was having these big spike weeks. If he's on the field for 10 to 12 more snaps a game, I do think he is a reasonable flex play. And again, Vabs, he is 23 years old.
Yeah, he's young.
And he's wide receiver 61. Like, sign me up.
Yep. Tillman and Mims Jr. will certainly be 2 players at wide receiver that I'm targeting late. No doubt about it.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about a couple tight ends. And tight end is a hard position because it's kind of the haves and have-nots, right? Like there's a clear group of guys that we feel comfortable starting, and then there's everybody else. But who are 2 tight ends that we are stashing in our dynasty leagues? We'll tell you next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, tight ends. This is a tough position, but it's incredibly rewarding when you get that late round tight end that ends up becoming somebody that you can start every single week. So, which tight end are you stashing in your dynasty league?
I'd like to get some Strange, and that's Brenton Strange. It's funny. Okay, I love hair metal. Okay, listen, I grew up in the 80s. I love hair metal. There's this band called Shark Island. Okay, and I guarantee you that there's no podcast on the planet that are talking about Shark Island that aren't music related. And they have this song called Get Some Strange. And every single time I talk about Brenton Strange, this song goes right into my head. All right, that's neither here nor there. But right now, if you look at the ADP data, he's a tight end 23. He's at 173. And he has got what you're looking for that late round type of dart throw. He's entering his age 24 season. And he showed some flashes of potential last year. He scored 10 or more points 4 times in his last 13 games. Now, that doesn't seem impressive, but I think this is. In the 7 games last year where he played at least 40 snaps, he averaged 9.2 points per game. Now, by comparison, Hunter Henry, who was the tight end 12 last year, averaged 9.1 points per game. Evan Ingram's no longer on the roster. The competition there is Johnny Munt. So when you think about that, and a guy who's now going to be playing plenty of snaps because the Jaguars did not grab anybody who's going to compete at the tight end position once they released Evan Ingram, this is a player who can give you 9 to 10 points per game potentially and be a top 15, top 12 type of tight end. And another thing you factor in, Trevor Lawrence last year, among quarterbacks who started at least 10 games, he was 7th in terms of percentage of targets that went to tight ends. He likes to throw to tight ends. The year before, now a lot of this was Evan Ingram, obviously, Lawrence was 3rd among quarterbacks in targeting tight ends. So Lawrence will throw the ball to the big guys. And so even though you have Brian Thomas Jr. and now, obviously Travis Hunter, I still think there's enough targets in this offense for Brenton Strange to become a bargain. And I'm not saying that you're going to start him every single week, but he could end up being an asset for your fantasy football team as a potential backup, maybe a guy you need to start if somebody gets hurt, bye weeks, etc. He has got, again, youth. He has got an ADP that's very attractive, and you would think the Jaguars offense will be better with Liam Cohen calling the shots, Lawrence healthy, and Travis Hunter at some degree in the mix. Again, whether that's full-time or not, we'll find out.
He's got the draft capital. He was a 2nd-round pick in 2023. And this is for most tight ends that you draft on day 2 and day 3. Year 3 is kind of the season where they start to put it all together. Yeah. We've been spoiled by guys like Brock Bowers and Sam Laporta that have come in right away and produced big seasons, right? But it's generally that 3rd year where these guys start to break out. And in the case of Brenton Strange, it's not like we haven't seen him play good football already. He had a 400-yard season, last year backing up Evan Ingram, which is pretty impressive. For him to be fantasy relevant, he only needs to get 300 more yards, 350 more yards, catch a couple more touchdowns. And now we're talking about him as a weekly starter, but there's nobody blocking him. I think he's going to kind of occupy the middle of the field. And if you think about Jacksonville's offense, you've got Brian Thomas Jr., who's a deep threat. You've got Travis Hunter, who's an outside receiver who does a lot of his work down the field. And the middle of the field could just be wide open for Brenton Strange to operate. And with a 6'6" Trevor Lawrence, you would think that would be a very easy target to throw to Brenton Strange 7-8 yards down the field on every single play.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, getting a tight end in a dynasty startup who has, sleeper / breakout potential, who's not like a rookie. And Marcus and I didn't want to talk about the rookies. We want to talk about, we know the, Terrence Ferguson and Harold Fanny. I mean, you guys know the names. We don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about guys who are, more veterans. And it's hard to find those guys. It really is. I mean, you're looking for a needle in the haystack because a lot of these tight ends are either, a lot older and have been in the league a while, or just they're not in the situation where you're kind of like, yeah, I kind of dig him. But Brenton Strange is in a situation that I dig. And again, he's coming into his third NFL season. Marcus very intelligently points out that's when a lot of these tight ends start to kind of get it. Okay. It's not always like Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers, boom, first year. A lot of times these guys take a couple of years, maybe more than the wide receivers. And so Brenton Strange is certainly somebody to keep an eye on. And, you could sing along with that Shark Island song if you want to. Look it up on YouTube.
I even think of someone like TJ Hawkinson, who was a top 10 pick. He didn't really start to produce like big fantasy numbers until like year 7 in the NFL. Like, so it takes these guys a long time. And we talked about David Njoku on Wednesday's show. It took David Njoku a long time to even become someone that was fantasy relevant, late into his career. So be patient with Brenton Strange. He's incredibly young. He's very athletic, and he's in an offense that we think is ascending. Yeah. All right, my guy. I really wanted to say Michael Mayer, by the way, because I love Michael Mayer coming out of Notre Dame, but he's just. I know that the Raiders are saying they're going to use more 2 tight end sets, and Mayer's having a great offseason, but I have my doubts. So instead, I went with Noah Gray of the Kansas City Chiefs. And again, I know Travis Kelce's there. But Noah Gray is somebody who has earned more and more snaps in this offense. You might be surprised to know that he played 58% of the offensive snaps for Kansas City last year. So even with Travis Kelce playing every game, he's on the field a lot. And all it takes is Travis Kelce getting injured. And again, this is a dynasty league. If Travis Kelce retires, I think Noah Gray becomes somebody that is a every week starter because he's playing with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And again, it's not like he's been a bad player. Last year, he set career highs in receiving or receptions with 40 yards, 437 touchdowns with 5. He's incredibly efficient, averaging like 9 yards a target. All he needs is a little bit more opportunity. And I just won't be surprised, Fabs, this year. I know Travis Kelce said he's lost 25 pounds or whatever. To me last year, it felt like he was done. Like he was out there, he was making some, the red zone plays, whatever. It felt like the juice was gone. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get to week 5 and everybody just kind of shakes their head and it acknowledges that. And we see more and more of Noah Gray every single week.
And quietly, Kelce is in the final year of his contract.
Yep.
So also keep that in mind. Listen, if my girlfriend is Taylor Swift and I've done everything I could possibly do in the NFL, I've won Super Bowls, I've accumulated tons and tons of stats, I may decide that I'm done, after this season. I might very well do that if I'm Travis Kelce. So, I mean, he's making a boatload of money with his podcast. I mean, like, how much longer does he want to, open up his body to the punishment that occurs when you're playing in the National Football League? He's been doing it for a long time. So I wouldn't be shocked if this is it for Kelce.
I would.
And so that's why I like Gray, and I like your point here, because maybe he ends up, listen, he's not going to be Travis Kelce, but maybe he ends up sort of, adopting a bigger role in the offense moving forward, and based on where he's going to be. And once again, this is the big part of it. Me and Marcus are looking for those giant, those diamonds in the rough for you, those steals, those guys that you can draft. And you're like, damn, I'm glad I listened to Fabiano and Mosher because I stole this guy. And now look at him. I could start him every single week. And I think, Noah Gray's in that conversation.
Could he be like, again, these are very realistic comps. Could he be like Kate Otten in Tampa Bay? Like that of tight? Yes. That's all you're looking for here.
Yeah. I mean, like, 600 or 700 yard guy per season. Yes, he can absolutely be that. And keep in mind too, like the Chiefs, a lot of their wide receivers are in contract years. Like they're on short-term deals. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, a short-term deal. Juju, short-term deal. They too have the 2 young guys, obviously, but there could come a situation where Juju's gone, Brown is gone, Kelce's gone.
Rice is serving a suspension next year, right?
So yes. All of this, I'm telling you right now, Noah Gray's ADP is going to go up as a result of people watching this show and this conversation right now. It's just smart. You kind of put the pieces together and you see if what Marcus and I are talking about, especially Marcus, come to fruition and ends up giving you a little fantasy gold moving forward in the future.
And the last thing before we head out, very quietly, the Chiefs gave Noah Gray a contract extension last offseason that extends him through the 2027 season. So to me, with the fact that he's already playing this many snaps, he's already been fairly productive. I mean, 400 yards and 5 touchdowns for a backup tight end is those are really, really good numbers. To me, kind of signals that, hey, he's going to be the first guy in line to replace Travis Kelce. He's, again, under contract. We think going to be a better offense this year. Keep an eye on Noah Gray. He's tight end right now. Let's see. Tight end 32, 227, which means he's
free.
Probably in waivers, right?
He's free, yes. And by the way, before we go, is there any other podcast on the planet that mentions Shark Island and Taylor Swift in the same episode?
Probably.
I don't think so.
That's why you're special. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.